Volume up, not down. Welcome back, everybody, as we run through this episode. It is Friday, big, massive, huge, happy Friday to everybody around the world. Welcome all new subscribers. YouTube. Algorithm, probably something, someone sharing, I have no idea. Welcome back, Artist Journal, September 27th, 2024, broadcasting from a beautiful fall day in Berlin, Germany. My name's Adrian Pocobelli. And here we go again. I had reservations putting Nuv once again on the front page of the newspaper The Imagination. But I simply couldn't resist with this stunning work of art. And again, from an editorial perspective, I'm always kind of basically thinking to myself, if this was on my little fantasy in my head as I put this show together in the morning is, what is going to be, as you walk past the newspaper stand, what do I put on the cover where people want to buy it? And here, what I love about Nuv, and often you might even say from an editorial perspective, one of the precious kind of areas I'm trying to capture is something that I'd argue author J.G. Ballard mastered, which was that precious area that is simultaneously avant-garde, yet accessible. Both avant-garde and accessible. I would argue that's what we're seeing here. I think we can call it avant-garde with these kind of wild gradients. If you're not used to seeing Nuv, it's probably weirdly kind of shocking. We've been looking at Nuv's work for, I guess, over a year now. In a weird way, kind of a recent discovery. This show going on for 2 years and a couple of months now. But just fascinating and beautiful. Loving this new series by Nuv, where these homages to paintings that are both famous and not as famous. This one, of course, being incredibly famous in the MoMA. Many of you have seen it in person. Interesting colors, too. I have to say, almost like this almost metallic here, colors coming back. This beautiful skin colors. And just look at even these shapes. Look at this line, right? That's interesting. This isn't simply tracing, is it? Right? Like it's actually interpreting. This is not Picasso's line here. So Nuv is actually doing some interpretation here. However, immediately recognizable. Look at these gradients here. The ones in this leg here. I mean, again, like we're kind of used to it here. If you've been watching the show for a while, seeing Nuv's work, you kind of get used to it to a certain degree. I would argue this is pretty wild stuff and inherently digital, I might add. Inherently digital. Like the closest is it Fernand Léger, right? Let's actually look at Fernand Léger. And actually, before we do, here is, of course, Les Demoiselles d'Avignon, here called Les Señoritas d'Avignon, of course, Nuv being out of Buenos Aires, obra de Pablo Picasso, Eca por mí, as I continue learning Spanish here, live on the show, sold out, just released today, September 27th, today, and sold out at $13.50, edition of 8. So Nuv really starting to build a business for herself, isn't she? Very interesting. A couple of transferred, too. Actually, sorry, that's probably actually just moving it from a marketplace or something. Not sure what's going on there. But listed, so very, very interesting. And just sold the last one to Yuri J for $24. Interesting. So Nuv bringing in $100, basically. I mean, what is it? $10 each. Last one was 18. 10 times 7 is 70. Basically $90. Nice work. And doing it basically daily. Maybe not this much money, but, that starts to become a salary. If you can bring in $100 a day, to me, that's kind of the mark. That's if you can start doing that as an artist, that's starting to get pretty real. Because what does that turn into? $36,500 a year. And if you're in Buenos Aires, it's probably a pretty good salary. It's not a bad salary, frankly, anywhere. It's not wonderful. If you're working in the business world, working 8 hours a day in an office, it's maybe terrible considering the time. But if you're making art, on your own time. This is fantastic, right? So Nuv, again, tracking Nuv for maybe a year here. One of the most prolific and consistent, artists in this entire space. You rarely see Nuv taking a break. So pretty rad. We're going to look at Fernand Léger. Let's see if we can find any very quickly. I believe Fernand Léger. Yeah, you see these kind of... let's go here, soldiers playing cards. I'm doing this all from memory, thinking on the fly here. But you see what I'm saying? Kind of... So that's like, again, that's kind of the closest I'm getting. Kind of like a gradient artist, so to speak. Using gradients. That's who I think of. Are there any others? Fernand Léger, very quickly here. Fernand Léger paintings, just to give us a feel. You see here, so, this is where I start to connect the dots, so to speak. Interesting, could be an interesting case study to a certain degree, here outlines and then whatever else, outlines and gradients, right? So just kind of interesting. Here, this one almost looks like a Nuv 1914, or maybe Nuv 1914 looks like Fernand Léger. It'd be interesting to know if Nuv is influenced by Fernand Léger, or if it's just something. There are a bunch of gradient artists. Maybe not a bunch, but a few. Of course, Dan Control comes to mind. We're going to see some really interesting works that I missed from Dan Control a couple of weeks ago. Later this show, ukuleles. This is by Henri Rousseau, the original. And also, look at this hand. Look at this gradients in the hands. And almost the choppiness, you might say, in the hands. Deciding not to put the face, probably a wise decision. And here you see the great artist Henri Rousseau, sometimes called, naive, unfairly. Although, Ballard had, as I've mentioned before here, Ballard saw naivete, J.G. Ballard, as a kind of, he used it as a compliment, interestingly. He saw, William Burroughs, he called, the author, a naive of sorts, Warhol, I believe Dali, he called a naive. And what Ballard meant by that was someone who kind of approached reality and their art basically on their own terms. They were willing to naively go forward and just kind of reach out and kind of make their art, so to speak. So for Ballard, it was kind of a courageous and heroic act. And so in that respect, Henri Rousseau could definitely be considered that. Kind of a phenom of sorts, outsider artist, embraced by Picasso and others, as far as I understand. So I couldn't get a really great, I'd actually never seen the original. I just saw Henri Rousseau's and I thought, okay, kind of looks like a Rousseau composition. And there you go. This is from like a YouTube video. Interestingly, some of these are facing the other way, which I find interesting, almost a hallmark of the internet. Because for all we know, this has been inverted. Maybe the others are the wrong way. Who knows? It doesn't even matter. In a weird way, to me, if this is kind of facing the wrong way, it actually adds charm. And it kind of is also kind of part of that internet, this coming out of internet culture. So just kind of interesting how here it's the other way. But it seems to be all referencing this YouTube video here. The Picasso Project, Henri Rousseau. So who knows? Now, we already looked at these, but I think it's worth just noting how stunning these are. Another one, I assume Fernando Botero. So I've never even heard of Fernando Botero. So, Nuv 1914 showing another by Fernando Botero. Looks like a great painter. Because these are stunning, stunning, stunning works. I think I managed to actually get one of these. And here, of course, we started the show, I guess it was 10, 11 days ago, so probably 3 or 4 shows ago, with this work here, of course, the 2 women running on the beach by Picasso, a stunning work as well. So rad work by Nuv 1914. Again, so let's continue here. Again, kind of a pretty good day. That other video is, I think, over 1,000 views, which is interesting. Again, not sure what's going on with the algo, but it seems to be good. So let's look at the comments here. Tom Bombattle, Hart, great to hear from you as ever. Tom, I haven't seen too much from Tom recently, but I appreciate you. Feel free to post in the community or let me know if you're minting work, Tom, because sometimes I just lose the feed, so to speak. So by the way, but I haven't seen a ton, but it's great to hear from you. Awesome to hear from you. Pixel Lord, first one artwork is so good. So what are we looking at? Yeah, Enigmatris, a new discovery here. There's going to be more by Enigmatris this episode. I'm pleased to say, in as many ways as possible, tickling many nostalgic feelings at the same time from different eras. If you know what I mean, I kind of do. It's kind of interesting, this reproduction of this painting. It's almost kind of looks like it's scanned out of a book. It's kind of got enough, there's kind of like a mutedness. Like I feel like if we saw the original painting, it would probably be more saturated. If you know what I'm saying, probably. So interesting. Glad you enjoy it, and I know what you mean, because it does feel kind of 70s faded magazine or art book mixed with kind of modern technique here, right? With ASCII text. But then even the ASCII text, I mean, that text almost seems like it's from 1985. Right? So interesting blend. I take your point, Pixel Lord. Good grief. F888. I don't know that Jeff Goldblum did art commentary on YouTube. Hilarious. Cool video. Yeah, I get it a lot. I don't really, weirdly, I mean, of course, I don't really see it a huge amount, but I get what people are saying. I think it's hilarious. And obviously there's a similarity if everybody mentions it, or many people mention it. So anyways, thanks, and glad you liked the video. Welcome, good grief. Magician, art is alchemy. A verb, not a noun. An act, not a thing. So great to hear from Magician as well, arting their way through life. Great collector there too on the Tezos blockchain. Also some comments here on the YouTube. Thank you for the very nice response there. Gozo, thanks for showing my work. My absolute pleasure. Gozo makes beautiful kind of surreal work. Interesting, your mention of techno. This was an interesting comment. I'm glad that somebody else sees this too. Something that has attracted me to this scene is similarities with the origins of techno, where people come from different social and cultural backgrounds started to create all kinds of art with accessible technology. There is an internationalism to techno, without question. And we see the same thing here. We also see, like, there are so many weird parallels. Weirdly, it's 20 years later, I would argue. Like, the techno revolution was in the 90s. And in a weird way, we're only, of course there's been digital art since 1950, probably. 60, I don't know. But but it's interesting how I feel like what I call the second generation, the explosion, just like there's electronic music before techno and even some kind of dance music, it's kind of like the 80s where things really started to coalesce and turn into something and turn into, a kind of generational expression, shall we say, dare we say. So let's continue with the comment here. Right, so origins, it's similar to the origins of techno, and also in we use mostly software, but it's kind of similar that everybody's kind of got these different softwares that they're making their art with, just like people had their little, drum machines and different drum machines, different synths, and it's very interesting. Again, a case study could be written on the similarities. The sampling, right, there's the whole digital element, and you could argue is sampling in the 1980s digital, but for the sake of argument, right, kind of a digital technology, I think we could say, the copying or the recording of, at some point that's digital, I assume it is, right? The recording is at least digital, even if it's an analog, sampler or drum machine. So also these digital, sampling And I think sampling actually is worth zeroing in on. Sampling is very important. This idea, say that Nuv, like what is, you could call that a remix of Picasso that we saw at the start there, of all those other paintings, and where you put it up and it's like, here's the Nuv 1914 mix of Les Demoiselles d'Avignon. Again, and remixing, is just one of them. Another, like we could probably go on for 10 minutes here on the different kinds of ways that the similarities, filters, right? So very interesting, Gozo. Very interesting. And it's great to hear like when people agree, because sometimes I'm just speculating out loud, and it's really interesting to hear people feeling the same way. Roya Barr, so good. Awesome to hear from you. Thank you for the positivity, Roya. Always appreciated. Buddha Studio, I see you. I see all in YouTube. Amazing. Awesome. Thank you, Buddha. Awesome to hear from you. Brain dead. It is brain dead. Yeah, it's braindead.gif. I use right-click dead as my URL. Thanks for the mention. Of course, it is brain dead. Awesome to hear from you. Thank you for being a great sport. And we have another work by you, actually, that beautiful still life, which looks like part of a work in progress or just a little sketch. Very cool work by Brain Dead coming up here. So thanks for the vibes. August Crown, guess I'm one of the 50% that can draw. For what it's worth, well, clearly, August Ground is able to draw. I was kind of saying, half jokingly, probably half the people here don't know how to draw with a pencil, and it's probably actually higher than that. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of like we're back to techno. It's like, when you listen to like Jeff Mills or like the early techno, it's almost like, and if you try fooling around yourself, it's almost like there is no need for a melody, or for some sort of composition. It's sort of like you put in a bunch of stuff and all of a sudden it just starts to make something, and then you add a 909 bass drum and hi-hats come in and the ride and whatever. Snare, right? The, what are they? The rim shot, right? The bell. Anyway, so beautiful drawing, August. Thanks for sharing. Termism, that was funny, hilarious. Ah heck, Joshua Sobel, big shout out. And termism, indeed, all of this need for terms, we have coined a term for everybody that needs to make the terms, which is termism. Maybe they are termists. Sabato, great episode, Poco. It's time for contemporary art as such to die. I couldn't agree more. I was out yesterday and I was, I couldn't believe, I was out yesterday here in Berlin going to a few and I was bored out of my mind, is really where it's gotten to with me. Like, I couldn't believe it. And we're painting with a broad brush and we're generalizing, but because I thought kind of edgy title on yesterday's episode or Wednesday's episode, the death ? Of contemporary art. But it kind of like, once you start thinking of contemporary art as the new modern art, so to speak, and that it's just another movement, as was being kind of aptly observed in that tweet from a couple of shows ago, it's a lot easier to just go, oh, maybe this is dead. Like maybe this is, or is ending, or is fast and quickly ending, is, and I don't say that with like, it's just like trying to assess the reality of the situation is where I'm coming from here. It's not like I may have a small axe to grind on that, but I don't need to be saying that. My sense is like, but it's starting to just genuinely feel that way. And again, isn't it interesting? Sabato agreeing. It's time for contemporary art as such to die. Also appreciate the Jameson mention, the Frederick Jameson mention. Yeah, with the combination. There's only combination now. I agree that we're approaching new kinds of tech that will usher in some insane art movements. I'm bullish on biological computer interfaces like the brain, organoid, computers, scientists are growing from stem cells, as well as fungal robots. So I think maybe tongue-in-cheek here, unsure. It's going to be crazy. It sure will be. And this very interesting comment from Sabato. Very interesting to hear that. Zafgod, awesome to hear from you. And August Ground, who cares? 100%. So referring, I believe, to this debate over the digital reproduction of physical brushes. Should we care? What does it mean conceptually, right? And I think, and I was basically saying, I used to care more after kind of waffles and seeing just like the fun that's being had. And, you know, it's kind of like, who cares? It's about the mark. It's about the digital mark and kind of end of story. How we get there, maybe we don't need to question it too hard. It's interesting. We heard from Enigmatris, which was awesome. Thank you, Pocobelli, for including me on your artist journal. We have more beautiful works by the very prolific, I must say, Enigmatris. Amazing and super interesting analysis of my work. So rad to hear from you, Enigmatris. Really appreciate it. Very rad work. Again, we have more coming right up here. Quick look at the community, which is growing nicely here too. Louis JPD, I've been experimenting with ways to diversify from GLB presentations in Blender and find a more graphic kinetic style. And I think I have found it with my new Mitographic series, first one minted here. So very interesting. So looks like doing some exporting here, I think. Look at that. So as Sabato is saying, it's going to get crazy, right? And here, like case in point, thank you, Louis JPD. Look at this. And this looks like a physical because this looks like it's written over. So very interesting, Louis. Great to hear from you. First one minted here. Let's just see where Louis is minting. It is on object. So if you want to pick one up, edition of 10 and very reasonably priced here. So pretty rad. Very cool work. Louis JPD. Thank you for posting in the community and for all the comments, Louis. Appreciate it. Rural Idol, Psychic Death, more Jungian Ackroyd Dither experiments. Hilarious. And there we can see the Dither kind of ego death, and that's on Tea, which is also on Tezos. Very cool work from Rural Idol. Juan Pez, a new piece for my collaboration on Object.com. Chicos Malos, Evil Kids. Almost looks like a physical, doesn't it? And indeed, the kids do look a touch disturbed at the minimum. And here's Zizo. This is my new drop on Blink OASM, which is also an object. Kind of looks like AI, so interesting AI artwork. Thank you for posting, Zizo. And Ilya Barabin, hello everyone. Check out my collection of animations dedicated to emotional states. Very cool. So we got some animation there. We got happy and sad and everything. And here we saw this last time, this rad self-portrait by 2002. Very nice work. Thank you, everybody, for posting. So I thought this was super interesting. Within the context of our, just a little added kind of evidence on our discussion on contemporary art and what it all means. And so Whitney Museum posts this. This is 16 hours ago, only 102 views. I mean, let's reload here just for the sake. Like now it's 97. It's going down. But, you know, basically 100 views for the Whitney Museum. Like, this is their YouTube channel. And did I bring up? Yeah, like, so what this, and this isn't unique to their last video and press preview, Edges of Ailey, Edges of, like, exhibition teaser. This is their new exhibition. And, like, this is the Whitney in New York, you know, a globally renowned institution that deals with basically modern and contemporary art. Let's look. Full range of 20th century and contemporary American art with a special focus on work by living artists. Okay. You would like 157 views, 84 views, 190. Like this one at least has 761, but we're looking at like 200 views. Here you start to get a few more, 560, 716, 2,200, but for the Whitney. So now why do I show this? It's to illustrate, I would argue, it kind of starts to reinforce this observation that, or this hypothesis, that it is in fact starting to die. We're seeing the market start to die, and you don't need to be able to afford art here to watch this. Like, where's all the interest here? So it's just kind of interesting. You know, they have 27,000 subscribers. So interesting, right? So this is interesting too. So ArtNet, let's all laugh at how cursed Google's generative art Alice in Wonderland is. So more like Infinite Blunderland. Now, kind of an interesting story, fairly well-known art reporter Ben Davis, and basically is looking at Google Labs' recent Infinite Wonderland experiment. I thought this was just interesting to see, how, this was on the front page of ArtNet. And so here, and just to see how AI is getting dealt with. And I think it's actually a fair enough article. Like, it's sort of showing how this is the AI version. These AI versions don't look that great, right? And kind of just showing kind of skepticism towards these tools, which I think is fair enough, actually. Like, and saying, like, we can't go through this whole article, but my point is, here are some of the examples. They don't look that great. And the, reporter or opinion writer, commentator is a little skeptical. And I'd say understandably, right? But I guess it's kind of about what's being left out, though. There is a ton going on, and I'm just not seeing a ton of it in the mainstream. Here's another article from ArtNet. Digital art star Rafik Anadol is opening the world's first AI museum. So this is going to be interesting. It's called Dataland, and it's going to be open in LA in 2025. And so, of course, Rafik Anadol, the face, really, of AI as far as the mainstream is concerned, or what you might call the establishment, art media, and art intelligentsia. Interesting, though, just as an artist, as someone, with opinions, I don't see in what we'd call establishment publications the real edgy, kind of exciting stuff that we're seeing with RJ, that we've seen with Inigo Bilbao, that we've seen with Lily Illo, that we've seen, and on with Tukes. Just to name some examples, with Strange Thing. You would think if anybody would have kind of broken through, it would be Strange Thing. With, like, just recently, you saw, like, the Dying Slave kind of combined with modern sports stars to incredible effect, right? So just kind of interesting. So just interesting. I don't think we need to dwell on those articles. Unreal Box, I have a suggestion. This is actually a lot of people saying this is a great idea. This is interesting. Unreal Box is zeroing in on a weird glitch, you could say, that's been actually across all NFT digital art platforms. I have a suggestion. Tezos, also XDZ, also known as Tezos. Tezos' historical value is a necessary change at object.com. This representation in the user interface, tied to the current Tezos price, is counterproductive and undermines the value of our work. 3 years ago, a work for half a Tezos equaled 32 cents. The answer is no. So what this person is pointing out is the value of Tezos, say 3 years ago, let's say was $4, $4 to $8, let's call it. Let's call it $4 for the sake of argument. So if you sold for half a Tezos, it was actually worth $2. But what OpenSea does, what every platform I've ever seen that shows this information does, is they'll take the current price of the Tezos, which is maybe 75 cents, and then they apply it to all the old prices. So then you get this distortion where it's saying it sold for 37 cents 3 years ago when probably it sold for maybe $4, $2 to $4, right? So I've seen this on OpenSea as well, and it's actually, I agree with this writer, it's actually, it misinforms. Now, I think most people understand who are in crypto, but a lot of people might not, and if you have new people coming in, they might not understand that, or all to say it's just kind of the wrong information. This probably shouldn't be here, even though it's kind of nice to know. So just kind of interesting. So they're saying instead of using the current US dollar values of Tezos, you follow the example of TZKT and display how much the coin was worth at that time. So I guess it's, it's probably going to be a lot more kind of database calls or retrieving database info, imagine. I think that's probably the reason why they don't do that. Or it's an oversight. I don't know. But so interesting. I would love to see that. I think it would be very helpful. But I think it would be way more database calls. I suspect that's part of the issue. Very interesting comment. August Ground. Sometimes it's hard for people to believe you can both be an artist and collector which is commonplace around these parts. History will tell the tale. Tail. So just pointing out the kind of very unusual situation of how many people are both collectors and artists in this space. And I think it's by virtue of the fact that it's very reasonably priced and you're kind of buying and selling in, let's say, a crypto. So you already have Tezos. You don't need to convert it out, and maybe you want to buy something. So there's not much friction when you already have the crypto and then you want to buy more. And so it's very interesting. It's just an interesting phenomenon. We've commented a lot on that, I'd say in the last 2 years, really since we started this show. And it's just worth remembering. Kelowna Contemporary is starting to see hints of parting of the sea between substance and fluff. You can just feel it in the air. Yeah, it's interesting. It's like the Tezos price will take off. We're always waiting for that. But I do kind of get that sense as well. There is a sort of sense, like I think time is on the side of the art to a certain degree, of the art that will, persevere. The art that will persevere, I think, to state like obvious thing, the art that will persevere, time is on its side. And so I think with every passing day, the art that will persevere gets kind of more credibility, so to speak, or it becomes clearer. What it means. So anyways, interesting comment from Kelowna Contemporary. And finally, Kayla Mattis. Let me see if I can make this bigger. This is rad. So we've looked at Kayla Mattis before. Her work, Weaving the Fire Emoji by Penelope, of course. And so you see, look at how awesome this is. This really exciting artist, and I guess Penelope maybe is the cat. Named after probably the Odyssey there, Odysseus' wife Penelope, who I think was known as a weaver, not sure. So anyways, look at that. Look at how cool this artist is. Kayla Mattis on Instagram out of LA, rad artist. More work by Enigmatrix. So putting out more work here. So interesting, more art history. We're seeing a Venus, I think this is Ang, right? And interesting kind of blocking out here. So a lot of the things we're noticing on that bowl of fruit here, we see some interesting masking out of the figure, really interestingly done. And again, very kind of soft edge there. And then here we see, even always experimenting here, we see almost what looks like a white visual ASCII. And then there does seem to be almost a blurred in there. Oh, no. I think it's just white ASCII. Interesting. So instead of the dark ASCII, which we see, I think, here, we're seeing some white ASCII, too. So just interesting work. Beautiful. By Enigmatrix. Here's another one. I think ASCII Mirror. Exactly. This is called ASCII Mirror. Fun piece here. And one more, also looking like from a famous painting, which I cannot identify. But more cool ASCII work here. Purple text. So much exploration by this artist. It's really cool. And there's something that just really works in that whole series. Here is Yuri J. A lot of you may have seen this. I think it's called Grocery Store. Exactly. Sold for 0.1 ETH. So it's probably $250. Nice piece here. Let's see if we can make it bigger. And here, of course, trademark in the roof there, the mosaic filter. And if you read the One of One interview with Yuri J, again, kind of confirming once again, filters on filters, effects on effects. So very interesting and powerful. And that's how you get stuff looking so unique. Because the thing is, once you start exporting or you start putting effects on effects on effects, the possibilities become, they multiply exponentially. That's why I always say, that's one of the reasons I always say we're only scratching the surface here. Because this software going into this software all of a sudden creates this effect. It's really, it's hardly been explored. And there's always new softwares coming online, right? So if you think, so again, I always say, if you're running out of ideas as a digital artist, try new software. As an artist, really, try new software. Because you can always apply that technique to physical, right? So again, And how do we, yeah, we already had this discussion about how technology and art, how do you infuse excitement into, contemporary, painting, so to speak. Bring in the technology, bring in, unique shapes and forms and textures that you might only get through the digital world, also making it relevant, which was also an issue. Yuri. So this is People of Tezos. This is a series that's been going on for years on Tezos, which takes, artists on Tezos and asks them to make a self-portrait. Here's Yuri J, very kind of anonymous here, and a self-portrait of Yuri J. They tend to do really well, and this one did quite well too. There was a bidding war between Sunday Funday and Absurd Deity, and then Bugged Matrix came in at the end with 750 Tezos. And look at the bidding here, going from 50 all the way to 470, and then Sunday Funday, tired of wasting their time, 700 Tezos. Will you match? And then Bugged Matrix comes in and swoops in for the piece. So Yuri J on a roll, definitely on a roll from a art perspective, and on a roll from a market perspective, on fire, excitingly. RJ, 3 figures, check this out. I don't think this is minted yet. Beautiful, or if it will be at all. Look at these textures, these outrageous textures here. So beautiful combo of what looks like AI, maybe some magic wand, maybe some sort of textual Scamra type, stable diffusion type texturing. Interesting pixelation here. Nice color too, by the way. And then adding a little bit of movement there in the figures. Very nice piece. And other pieces here, Lucian Freud, after Francis Bacon diptych. So another homage. Look at this. And how big does this go? This is full size. So another interesting move here. So of course the shapes are gorgeous. I love the painterliness. Again, the texture, especially in here, we're seeing all sorts of novelty, shall we say. And finally, I think from a conceptual angle, I think it's quite interesting what RJ is doing here by taking what looks like a pixelated rendition here, just kind of turned, as you see, where the green is turned into a light green and a dark green, and taking certain areas and almost like these rectangular shapes. So almost kind of semi-randomly, who knows, and then making certain areas of the image basically alternate between this red here and then what you see over here, right, with the pixelation on top, and then here just leaving it. So some pretty nice work by RJ. What is this selling for? $250, Neon Monk. People are getting, the market's heating up, interestingly. As the contemporary art market, we're seeing story after story. I mean, Sotheby's, will it go bankrupt, is what the Wall Street Journal is asking. Here, we're seeing an uptick, like in a significant one. Look at that, RJ, 250 Tezos. What about this one? Scamra, 250 Tezos. This is looking good. Frank Auerbach, similar thing here. So RJ on fire here. So really cool. And look at these great edges. Just love this stuff. So again, this wonderful work here by RJ. Looks like a diptych. And here's another one going really edgy in its roughness. Looseness, we might say. Crucifixion. This by RJ, picked up by Neon Monk for 333 Tezos. These are some pretty wild sales here. This is like really heating up here. I did not realize. So RJ making a killing yesterday. Look at this, like Nuv doing well, RJ doing well, Yuri J. I mean, these are all like, if you can keep consistent at this, which is the whole, trick here in this boom bust business, but were this to continue, Nuv's been pretty consistently selling out everything. It starts to become a job, which is kind of the dream for a lot of people out there. For many of us out there, 1010. So another work. How much is this selling for? 77. RJ making a killing, and I'm not even showing all of RJ's work. The excitement. So very cool. So RJ, after taking a little break, comes back with a massive splash, 512 by 512 pixels. Has Dribble Waffle Adult Arcade. So let me open this. And this is on Rodeo. And so more exciting art here. This has Dribble Waffle, who uses a lot of in-browser kind of painting tools that are free oftentimes. And so here, just more wild kind of painting. Kind of looks like a repetition going on here, right? And look at these. Just, again, we're kind of back to these super interesting textures here. We have novelty over here. Look at this. And just kind of doodling, making things interesting, and even this nice kind of yellow to green gradient frame. Interesting. Here's another one, Snowman. And not sure what the reference is. And beautiful pixelation here, some of it moving. Here you have a cycling gradient, and other areas just static. Beautiful, always keeping it interesting. And I think often goes between softwares oftentimes. Maybe not always, but oftentimes. Interesting portrayal of a snowman, right? It's almost easy to forget. But here, it's just kind of very pixelated out. Another interesting thing to observe here is the power of using different sized pixels. You see small pixels here, large pixels here. This is often kind of easily done by, I would argue, actually that's where the copy and paste starts coming in. You make this background here, then you paste the snowman from another software, which was at a different resolution, into that, and boom. And all of a sudden you're starting to get an interesting contrast there too. Pretty interesting. Gonorrhea, edgy work here. Let's see what that looks like here from Waffles. So a hilarious work here from his Dribble Waffle, kind of a almost medical looking situation here, biological situation from Dribble Waffles. Very cool. Here's Cider. This is on Art of the Millennium. Is that full size? It is. Interesting. So maybe a PNG here. In Love with My Passport by Cider. That's on Art of this Millennium. And interesting. Digital illustration and collage by Cider. So kind of looking slightly figurative here, almost like a plant. Interesting piece. Always great textures in Cider's work. Here is The Myth, self-portrait number 113. Good morning, have a nice day. I kind of related to this one. Felt like I was looking in the mirror to a certain degree this morning as I looked at this piece, looking at all the art. And we're seeing these figures here. These are in recent Myth works. We're going to see the red, yellow, and black homunculi here. Of course, you still get that beautiful green and pink kind of ribbons at the back, and the famous Myth sky, and there the Myth looks on, self-portrait, probably made in Procreate, drinking a coffee, few kind of cigarettes there, beautifully painted, and that beautiful Bic lighter. And there is a Myth. I wonder if that's the one that I actually, it looks like a physical, but I actually own a Myth. That's kind of similar to that. One of my favorite works by the Myth. I remember running to, or at least like getting on my phone as I was out with people, seeing it come out, and then taking a break, just saying, guys, I need to get a drink, and then going off and trying to buy that work. Succeeded, actually. This is interesting, more work on Surreal App. This is by The Myth as well. I like the sense of humor. It seems like there's some sense of humor here, doing a big M&M, kind of not taking themselves too seriously, which is kind of nice and fun. But there's so much depth and profundity that it's not like it takes away, like it adds, if anything, to the mystery of the Myth. So the Myth as M&M, very interesting on Surreal App. Here is a collaboration between Uxine and XO_. Rite of passage into a fragmented simulation. So here we saw, I believe, the preview of this on X. So I assume Uxine did this area here, and then it was probably pasted in to this other work by XO. So cool collaboration here. And the guy with the computer doing a rite of passage into a fragmented simulation. Okay, 42 Tezos and edition of 24. And how many? 10 to go. Nice. Again, more sales. Rat Cloak, no idea, no skills, no desire to impress anyone. The unshakable pillars of my work. Indeed, isn't that the truth? And here we see very interesting kind of developments here. I think we have a new brush that Ratcloak is using. And remember we saw this yesterday. Was it on Instagram where we saw the original black and white work? So Ratcloak doing a kind of homage of sorts, but really just using it as a reference and then adding all these other business and really making it his own. Very interesting. Here's another one. W Wood, 5,000 by 5,000 pixels. Photoshop, digital brushes, edition of 1, sold. And that sold for 130 Tezos at auction. I'm telling you, it's looking pretty good over here, isn't it? From a market perspective. It's almost like, and we've been feeling this boil up, I would argue, over the last couple of months. And I see it in myself. I started buying a little bit more when I'd sell work. Rather than cash out, I would start buying work. Rather than buy more crypto with it, I buy more art. Let's put it that way. Anyways, more cool work here. Kind of an edgy work. Not exactly sure what's going on. Kind of feels like a weird 17th century kind of hats here. Almost like Scarlet Letter type figures here. And interesting digital novel, really dark kind of looking work here with the swords and the heads. Not exactly sure what's going on. Edition of 1 selling for 130 Tezos. Moth, this is by Detaste. And this is an edition of 10, and this is sold out at how much? Where is the price? Maybe that was sold on Taya? Not sure how that works. Now 15 Tezos, edition of 10. And there is the big moth. So interesting digital painting here. And the person looking at the newspaper, so maybe this person is that person, is kind of how it looks here, doesn't it? Interesting painting. Here is PP Universal, Piazza Dental number 3. So putting out actually a whole series of dental works here. When I met PP, he had just come from the dentist. So perhaps this is a little art imitating life, perhaps. Not exactly sure what's going on. Cool piece, though, by PP. Big shout out to PP who is in Buenos Aires. Beautiful neighborhood in Buenos Aires. We also have a work. I guess we'll see it. We'll see it soon. Dan Control. So I was mentioning other gradient artists. So this came out a couple of weeks ago. I missed it. So Dan Control, reusing elements from previous works, reusing the almost iconic landscape here, and then using the pan, and then repeating it. And then doing this Pan's edition of 10 Tezos, doing it with the ledgers. These are really cool, almost awkward, we might say. Kind of an interesting, awkward composition by Dan Control, edition of 10, and already, doing well. 6 or 7 sold there. The chairs, office in a row, repeat. So office chairs just repeated. Again, repeating that landscape. And here's slightly different green and blue, interestingly. New Row TV, again, awkward. And I kind of love the awkwardness. It's an edgy as ever. Like there's always kind of a challenge, an experiment. This is huge. From Dan Control, edition of 10. None sold so far. And here's another one, Vapes, edition of 10, 1 sold so far. So this all came out a couple of weeks ago. So interesting work here by Dan Control. Hilarious. This is Marietta. Also, who I met with PP Universal in that beautiful neighborhood in Buenos Aires. And here, really cool work here. Great composition here of this kind of what looks like a CGI work. I think it's using Blender. Yeah, made with Blender and Nomad Sculpt, which I think is a tablet software. Not sure. This one really jumped out. I think it was also on the front page of Foundation. So congrats to Marietta with that. Grassborn, this is 0.015 ETH, edition of 10. Great work. Continuing on, and here is, who is this? Igor Alves, with what looks like kind of another almost textured gradient here. There almost seems to be movement. It's hard to tell. Interesting landscape. if that's what it is. It's going to rain today. It is. So it's almost like that's the rain coming in, perhaps. That's on Zora. Interesting piece. And 12 minted so far. Here's Jake Studios' last family feature. And let's see if this loads. Jake Studios, of course, doing a lot of what we might say intuitive illustration, kind of surreal. Let's see if it loads. Let's go. Here it is. So as you see here, and I think we were seeing this maybe work in progress. I remember this bag, and then, of course, the red on it. So an angelic kind of halo here, dripping upwards. You see the surrealism, so to speak, here, just kind of wild. Again, following... they seem like improvisations of a certain kind, if I had to guess. This looks like the Jake Studios figure here, not positive. And then weird, like you see the earth kind of broken up here. Is that a JPEG icon? Not sure. The Tron arm, just very interesting work. Current bid of 0.08, so maybe a couple $100 is being bid on this so far by Sky Golpe. 4 hours to go. Here's Tornado Rodriguez. I think these are part of the same drop. And this is, the Quote Your Touchgrass Art event. And this is Tornado Rodriguez Green Day. This is edition of 10. And here you see another super cool Tornado Rodriguez illustration, also out of Argentina. And here you see a figure in a pool with it kind of splashing around here. Kind of surreal illustration here. Interesting color too, a lot of green and pink. So 1 minted out of 10 for 0.015 ETH. Daniel W. doing a People of Tezos work. This is at 20 Tezos edition of 1. And I believe the bidding has started. Actually, I think it's at 25 now. And here it is. So there's Daniel W., People of Tezos. And there's the head being held by Daniel W. And almost, what is the name of that god? I can't remember off the top of my head, but anyway, interesting work. Love the mushrooms. Hilarious. In the maze and the mushrooms. That's pretty original, actually. Pretty cool work. Edition of 1 on Tezos. Human by definition. We've been looking at this artist the last couple of shows. Just kind of more interesting work here. Not sure exactly. Doing quite well, actually, on X as well. So just interesting animated abstract, I guess you'd call it. Nicholas Sassoon, Moon Rising. So these are all gorgeous, these works that Nicholas Sassoon puts. Kind of looks like the equivalent of the... Remember Stalamir was making the lenticular print? It kind of looks like lenticular print, but this is all done digitally, and I think you can't zoom in here. And interestingly, when it compresses, it changes the nature, and I'm not sure it's necessarily worse or better. It's actually pretty cool when these works get compressed. I think if you zoom in, though, I think it's just a different pixelation. Anyways, Nicholas Sassoon, 20,000 views, 136 retweets, doing awesome. Here's Datura. Great to see Datura's work here. This is on Foundation. Bliss 404, 0.015 ETH. I think it's an edition. And cool. They're always kind of landscapes, as far as I remember, with kind of these kind of noise glitched out landscapes. This is on base, and it is an edition of 10. Here's Cap'n on Rodeo. So putting out some works on Rodeo. Let's see if we can make that bigger. I guess that's full size. So cool, really cool works that Cap'n's releasing on Rodeo. This is, so Jam 09. Here's Jam 07. Very nice work here. Love this these horizontal pixels, kind of reminiscent of the Figment's work. And here's another one, just kind of minimal. It's probably Cap'n just kind of putting some stuff around, moving some stuff around. Love the minimal kind of looks, though. More beautiful work, interesting gradient there, too. Maybe we can zoom in there. Very interesting, this work here. So beautiful work by Cap'n. Love the colors, actually. This kind of violet and kind of mustard yellow. And that kind of deep red. Very nice color scheme. Let us continue. Here's that work by Braindead, who of course I follow. This kind of very fun still life by Braindead, just using 2 colors. That really nice kind of rich gray and showing, again, your classic still life, some grapes, but doing it in pixel art fashion. And here's Anis Abdin, who, of course, I think we saw this work last episode. Polymer Genesis, who's been putting out a pixel artwork a day. Follow them on X or Instagram if you want to follow it. I thought this was interesting just to see some of the process here. Wishing you a happy Friday with today's work in progress. Tons of dithering and animations to go, so a lot of work goes into this, and has been keeping up this daily pixel art work. I think, see, that's day 270, and that was yesterday. So day 271, impressive. Let's continue. Our Milk. I think this is just posted here. I'm not sure if it's new or not. I've never seen it before. Kind of feels like a minimal, I feel like I have maybe seen it before, but this feels almost like a minimal version or maybe a different colored version. I was at a Warhol show yesterday at the Neue Nationale here, and it just got me thinking, I need to break this barrier in my brain of, I talk about this, of just minting out of control, where you go, okay, here's the red one, here's the green one, here's the yellow one, because I keep these on my personal computers and whatever, files, photos, and I see it here too. Like, it's like, oh, well, what if? I don't know if this is new or if it's old, but what if it's an old work, and it's just the colors are changing a little bit, and it kind of becomes a completely different work. It didn't trouble Warhol. I'm not sure it should trouble us. And it looks great. Like, look at how cool that looks. Interesting colors. BBBA1, this is Byte by Bit. And interestingly, part of the Saints app, this work was created for collectors who subscribe to tier number 2 of the Saints app. This is super interesting. So let's take a look here, see if it plays again. There we go. So interesting. So it looks like an old software. This work was created by 1995 Storymaker based on 8-bit audio. Super Short Jingle, Audio Experiment, another work. This was created for tier number 1 at Saints app. So cool work here by Byte by Bit. We're going to have to return to the Saints app itself and actually take a look around. I loaded it up, but I think you have to log in and everything. I'm curious. Or maybe we go to Byte by Bit's X feed and we see what's going on. Xmortal owning one of these, so maybe Xmortal's part of tier number 1, not sure. Maybe Xmortal bought it on their own. Not exactly sure. Interesting. Ugo Digi with an interesting kind of historical looking work. Of course, Vesuvian Man by Leonardo, applied in digital form with some circuitry around it. Loading. Cool work by Ugo Digi. When Machines Learn Humanism, and that is 0.069 ETH on Foundation. eBoy. Hi, Jesse. So, of course, eBoy being a duo out of Germany, pixel art pioneers. And so, always notable when they put a work out. Not sure who Jesse is, maybe a friend of theirs. Love the signature there. Signing the work of this very small piece. Here's Limbo. With kind of a pixel art work. Soul Software, part of 3-piece Game Boy-inspired series I'm building for Tezos. Can't wait to see that, and huge fan of using Game Boy colors, or even just taking old color, screen colors, whether it's Commodore 64, Amiga, you name it. Here, Game Boy. I believe Popple did that at one point. Anyway, rad work. Follow Limbo, of course. I follow Limbo, of course. Silva Santus, Full Moon. And so really nice glitch here by Silva Santus, Video Glitch ROM. Love those kind of vertical lines especially. Kind of almost abstract. And there we see a person in the moon going down. So kind of looks like a close-up, doesn't it? To a certain degree, but maybe it's not. Because then we see these hexadecimals are maybe regular size. So maybe that's just what the screen is. Open edition, 2 minted so far. Look at this. I missed this by LB. This came out August 12th. Really cool. Playing with what looks like, is it Etienne Jules Marie or the other one? I always confuse the two. And it almost looks like an animated version of those photos. Someone animated together, and then LB applying kind of pixelation to it. Edward Muybridge, athlete walking. So both Muybridge and Etienne Jules Marie doing that kind of photography, movement photography, interestingly. And it's almost like we see with GIFs and this interest in movement, I think is really interesting in the context of, say, Edward Muybridge and Etienne Jules Marie, of this kind of interest in movement. Like there is kind of a weird, I would argue, connection that we could make there. And so I think Elby's recognizing that here, right? Interesting choice of subject. Very cool. 3 Tezos. Practically free. Unknown Collector, ways to visualize. So Unknown Collector posting some rad artwork. Ways to visualize time-based media by Poet Engineer. UC is going to be on the Spaces in a week and a half, I think. So this is pretty cool, I thought. So again, kind of looking similar, right, to that Edward Muybridge, Etienne Jules Marie sort look, see movement. So more interesting, conceptually interesting work here. Very cool. Poet Engineer is the artist. Lucas Lejeune with some interesting kind of digital text here, kind of shimmering and flickering. So cool work there. Here is DJ Kiro Knapkin, with a cool video painting, as we like to call him here. We'll see if it loads up. Here it is. Nice kind of, minimal, right? You just zoom in. I've worked with a lot of paintings, sampled paintings, back to sampling, in a little bit in the Peloponnesian War series and a little bit in the Secret History of World War III, actually a lot in the Secret History of World War III. Zooming in tends to really help out. And it's interesting, I'd argue, on a conceptual level, because when you, again, scale transforms the work. So all of a sudden, if you take, for Basquiat brushstroke, and then you zoom in, it starts becoming a different entity. And I'd argue that's kind of what we're seeing here, is zoomed in brushstrokes. Very powerful technique, which I have employed and probably will employ again. This is on Foundation 0.013 ETH. Here's Feels with a beautiful new work, a couple of works. Look at that. It was very tempting to start with this. I ended up going with Nuv, but this was just like right. It was a very difficult show to put together today. In that regard, there's a lot of tough decisions. It's going to start with this Moss, which is just quite beautiful. Kind of edge our way into Friday here. But yeah. So, anyways, beautiful work by Feels. I've started the show with Feels before. And just a rad artist selling. Look at that. Clown Vamp putting an offer of 150 Tezos, selling for 77 Tezos. People, big collectors. Again, the market extremely healthy from the looks of it, isn't it? Here's Renki with a new work, Tsubuda. So continuing with this grid, kind of making the grid larger here, and I love the color scheme here too. Edition of 1, unlisted. And here is Native Ed. Kind of a wild CGI crucifixion here with neon lights cycling through. A wild work here from Native Ed. And here is Salawaki, Peak Internet JPEG Success. So they're taking a picture of the feet. So interesting piece here. Cool CGI, or GLB, I should say, by Salawaki using Blender 4.2, edition of 25, and selling for 6 Tezos each, sold out. Into the AI we go, No Hygiene. It's a pretty hilarious DJ work here. With the Angels are DJing now. So a pretty fun work. Almost looks like blood there, but maybe it's a reflection. Not sure. And there is the AI DJing, I guess, of the Angels. Here's another really interesting AI work. Inez Bilbao, GM. So never saw this one before. And again, kind of looking like one of those other AI works we saw, but maybe this one's processed. Maybe it's re-AI'd, remixed using AI. Maybe it's remixed using other ways. Interesting piece. Looks great. Here's another one by Inez Bilbao. So more kind of has that a little bit of that Mickey Mouse kind of feeling to it, but almost combining with their other work, which is kind of more kind of almost like, I don't want to say gothic, but almost industrial, shall we say? Almost a combination. Very cool. I love the gray there. Nice rich gray. Here's Lily Illo with some new portraits. Or I think they're new, not positive. Don't remember seeing this up close kind of portrait. Interesting doubling here. Love it. Love it, love it. So beautiful AI distortions, I would say. Look at that. So very interesting work there by Lily Illo. And continuing on, here's Santiago with some AI artworks. So kind of a wild one here. Here's another one, no title. And here is another one, no title. So very interesting series here. Scamra with a wild series here, the work of art and aura, stable diffusion and diffusers, textual inversion. So here, you know, that kind of texture that we've been seeing Scamra use for almost, I want to say almost a year probably, maybe longer. And there we have someone on a computer, and interesting, again, stable diffusion, AI. Here's a variation on this, right? Edition of 1, and this is at selling for 10 Tezos. Very interesting textures here. So the whole series, as you see, I managed to get in the series. Thank you, Scamra. That is awesome, and I think may have sent that to me. So thank you for that. This is pretty interesting, because what is Scamra doing here? Playing with different ways of relating and perceiving an image and rendering an image, I would argue. Here it's being rendered a certain way. And what's interesting too, I mean, another technique is you can always re-upload it's kind of back to the effects on effects. Let's say you have your original is, I don't know, let's say your original is this guy. You have this, and then you can always re-upload that and then put effects on, and different effects on that, and all of a sudden you start getting to places which are very kind of where you can never get to otherwise. Let's put it that way. Here, it seems like Scamra is also playing with how images are perceived within different contexts. Say, for example, this show, for example, on object, for example, as a notification here, or if you have getting a bid, right? And seeing how, this is my interpretation at least, and seeing how meaning shifts within these different contexts. It's almost bringing us back to that Santiago discussion. What happens to a work of art when we put it in a museum, right? And what changes? As I, asked, is social proof an illusion, right? And we see it here, what happens when you have the, dark background? What happens when you have the white background? What happens when I think there was one that was in Discord. If I can, right? Here's the Discord one, right? So it's a pretty interesting experiment, right? Because it does change the visual meaning, interestingly. Moby Wellington back on the scene here, New Orleans, art in the age of artificial reproduction. And here we see a pretty cool, fun, beautiful AI artwork here. Very cool. Could also act as a great source for an actual painting, couldn't it? Edition of 20 for 20 Tezos, and selling quite well here. It's almost half sold already, so doing very well. By Mo Wellington. Here's Joao Salazar, Internal Landscapes, First Contact. Cool title. And I don't think there's volume. There is no volume here. So, of course, using plasticine or Play-Doh as the main, so physical, but then gifting it by putting movement in. So almost in that nebulous space between digital and physical, because you couldn't make this purely physical. You wouldn't have the animation, right? So kind of a claymation type feel. Auction starting at 0.3 ETH. And that's also in that art market. I think that was just the others were in, I think. Moto 583, Moto Hero, hilarious drawing here. Just such a fun, energetic, imaginative artist. Love showing their work. Caterpillar was the title. Really interesting piece by Walk. Great title here. This is also, the state of digital humanism is what that is called. That art market auction bid of 0.15 ETH is the starting bid. And interesting title, Amazon. So you almost look like an office where someone's working. Very interesting. And almost that brown almost reminds you of like the Amazon cardboard, doesn't it? Very interesting piece by Walk. Beautifully painted as usual. And here's Gregorio Zanardi on Super Rare, Salix Babylonica, and selling this work. And you get, I believe, the oil is 70 by 100 centimeters and created September 18th, sold. So big congrats to Gregorio Zanardi selling this painting. which I still expect to actually become more common. I'm kind of waiting for this to happen more, which is selling physical works via the blockchain. I don't see why not. You get instant payment, and then I guess it's harder for the collector. Right. Anyway, much to discuss next show. Thank you for joining me. I hope you have a wonderful weekend. Thank you again for all the support. And until next time, take care.